Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. What is this? This is the weekly Spinner Rack if it's your first time tuning in. And what I do here is talk about the latest comics that came out. Ghost Machine released some new things through Image. I happened to get some Kickstarter fulfilled books. Jeff Smith's precursor to Bone, Thorn, arrived this week. We'll take a look at that stuff towards the end of the show. I've got a lot of wild news this week. Stuff with Rob Liefeld, stuff with Mike Mignola, like some pretty big names. Superman sold for $6 million. So I don't know, maybe that's one of you guys out there in the audience, just happen to have that in your back pocket. But we also have a guest. I'm going to get right to it. I'm excited about this. A lot of you probably know my guest. He's 1/3 of the hosts of the Flophouse podcast. And you all know I like bad movie criticism, or at least misguided movie, not always bad. He's also an Emmy-winning showrunner, head writer, I should say, for The Daily Show. He's been head writer for Mystery Science Theater 3000 on Netflix. But he's also written a lot of comics, folks. Marvel, DC. He's got his own creator-owned series, a horror book I really love, Maniac of New York. We'll be talking about all that. Folks, please welcome my guest as he's here to talk about his new project, Disney's Hercules through Dynamite. We have Mr. Elliott Kalan. Elliott, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk about Hercules and anything else anyone else wants me to talk about. Within reason. With this, I should put limits on that. I apologize. I should put limits on it.
You caught yourself very quickly before I could start just burying your career. So very good.
You're like, what about the situation in the Middle East? And I'm like, I didn't know we were going to talk about that. Wait a minute. I'll put limits on this.
Every once in a while, this show just gets wildly, divisively political. You wouldn't expect it with the title, but that's the way it goes. Mm-hmm. I'll try to ease us in here with an easier, light question. You wrote a comic that created what I'm pretty sure must be the most memed panel in comics. I'm talking folks that don't know about an issue of Spider-Man and the X-Men, where Spider-Man met Sauron. I'm going to bring it up, actually, for folks that and they'll probably know what I'm talking about.
I should hope so. I should hope so at this point. I think I'm going to call it the second most memed comic book panel. But
what's the first?
I think there's that online comic gun show that was there's the panel of the dog sitting in the house that's on fire going, "This is fine."
That's fair.
I think that's number one. That's number one.
That probably is number one. I'll just equivocate and say this was a printed comic book.
All right, I'll give you that.
All right,
okay, that's fair. People had to go the extra.
That was digital comics.
Yeah.
But so what I'm curious about though is honestly how somebody reacts to having something like this get out there. Like, is it nice to know that your joke was so good that it's being shared well beyond most comic readers, or is it at all frustrating to not get the credit for this? Like, it's just shared out of context. Like, what has that been like?
It's a little bit of both. It's very exciting to me, partly because when I was writing that book, I thought of this joke and I was like, I don't know if I can really explain the mechanics of why this is funny. And I usually have a pretty good grip on how a joke works. I've been writing them for a long time. I have a book I'm working on right now for the University of Chicago Press that's about writing jokes. That'll come out hopefully next year. I don't know. That'll be my big scholarly work on how to write jokes. And so usually I understand the mechanics of one. With this one, I was like, I think this is funny, but if someone asked me to defend why it's funny, I don't think I'd be able to tell them. Like, I don't think I'd be able to explain it to somebody. And so it was very gratifying that people liked it so much that they wanted to replicate it and use it for things. And it was also like, it's gratifying to contribute something to the larger human culture, to live on after I die. But at the same time, there's part of me that's like, whenever I see it used and it's not attributed, there's part of me that's like, well, I wish that they mentioned the book it came from, because certainly many, many more people have seen it as a meme than purchased copies of Spider-Man and the X-Men #2. Right. And I think the trade might be out of print right now, which is too bad because I really loved working on that book. But
There's a chance it might be available digitally. I don't know how things like
it's
that get reimbursed, but yeah.
That's true. It should be available that way.
It would probably be on Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah, but it was very exciting. There is part of me when people will tag me on those when they show up, and it is very exciting that like, oh yeah, this thing exists. Like one thing I've done continues to exist even after years of working on television shows that kind of come and go. And this is the thing. Like I've said before, this is probably what will be chiseled into my tombstone. Someday. And people walk by in the cemetery and they're like, oh, he did that. Oh, okay, sure.
And then we'll jump forward 2 generations or something, and someone will come to your gravestone and go like, oh, he didn't credit the artist? What a scumbag.
Oh, I know. You're right. Oh, it'd be terrible. So I'll have to make sure that Marco's name is on there. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Switching gears a little, still talking about your comics, but I said in the intro, I sincerely like Maniac of New York.
Thank you.
That you're doing through Aftershock Comics. I binged through the first 2 volumes. I kind of came to it late, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, cool. And I guess your 3rd series is going on now, right?
It was going on. It was interrupted by some unfortunate financial tragedy that Aftershock. So it's a story that the half of it has been released. Okay. And I'm determined to get it finished at some point,
Yeah, I wasn't here to talk about like what's going on with Aftershock as a business, but what I'd like to do is talk about Maniac.
It's too late. We're talking about it. This is what we're talking about now. Of course, I have no information about it, but
it's that I'm a huge fan of like all sorts of movies, including like. I won't call them necessarily good, but I love the Friday the 13th movies. And this strikes me as a bit of like an inversion of that idea in the sense that there's a slasher. It's a slasher if you haven't read it, folks. I'm not going to give away everything that happens, but we very, very, very much align with the point of view of the heroes throughout the book. As compared to sometimes in horror movies, we follow the killer. And I just, they're basically final girls, but we're not introduced to them as such. What inspired you to structure the story that way? Like how did that come about? Was that intentional?
That's a really good question. That's a good question. It's one I haven't gotten before, and very much so. It was that. So a lot of it stems from the book. For anyone who's not familiar, it's about the idea that there's a masked slasher. Very similar in some ways, but not in others, to a well-known mass slasher who also took Manhattan. And it's very difficult to kill this thing. It seems impossible to kill. And so after a certain point, everyone just kind of has to deal with it. And the government gives up. And so 4 years after this kind of supernatural seeming killer has arrived in New York, is this a thing people kind of put up with?
Like a natural disaster that no one really is putting a massive effort into?
And people assume, well, of course, that's never going to happen to me, and you hear about on the news that, that Maniac Harry got loose in Gramercy Park, and you're like, oof, that's rough. Glad I wasn't over there. It's just a thing that exists. And I wanted to very much take the emphasis off of the monster's point of view, and even necessarily the monster's kind of origins and continuity and things like that, and put it onto the people who are either its victims or the people in positions of responsibility who are either trying to deal with this problem or who are abdicating their responsibility to deal with this problem. And there's a page in one of the issues of the first volume. The first volume is called Maniac of New York, The Death Train. And there's a page where, and Maniac Harry, a lot of it is him loose on a subway train. He's just killing his way through a subway train, which is something that I used to frighten myself with, a fantasy I used to frighten myself with when I lived in New York. Right beyond
for folks that haven't read it, and I won't give it away, but I just want to say, it's if Friday the 13th 8 had a budget, these are the things we would have wanted to see. We would have wanted to see what happens in iconic New York locations. From their schools to their trains to their sports.
I mean, the first issue, it starts with Times Square. It's New Year's Eve in Times Square, and this killer has appeared and massacres people. And that was a big part of it. New York is I grew up right outside of New York, and I lived there for a long time. And it's such a special city to me. And it was always disappointing to me that that Jason Takes Manhattan has so little New York. It doesn't feel like it's in New York. There's, a couple, a minute or two of him walking around Times Square, and that's
They
about it.
accurately got your midnight release of toxic sewage waste in the sewers. They got
that is
that
the thing.
piece
That's
right.
true. They got the facts right that in New York, every night at midnight, toxic waste is flushed through the sewer system. That's true. I mean, that's a Robert Moses project.
I want to give them credit for getting that one piece right.
Yeah. And so you're right. This was very much like, I wanted to see it done in a way that did justice to that city and the people of the city. There's so many different kinds of people in New York. And when you're riding a subway train, you share the space with people for a little bit of time, a few minutes might be, or a little longer, or a little less. And you can see through the windows whenever a train passes, just for a split second, you'll see the faces of other people. And it always used to boggle my mind with the size of the universe that all of those people have their own lives, their own worlds. They're the heroes of their own stories. I'll never know them, but they exist and have their own full universes around them. And so there's a page in an issue of that story where it's panel after panel is just the face of a different victim with who they were and where they were on what they were on their way to doing when they were on the train that day, because I wanted to reorient it more around the people who were affected by this rather than cheering on the villain. Although there is still part of me that's like, Harry, go.
You created an interesting villain. You still did.
Yeah, thanks. And in the the temptation was always to try to use Harry, the Maniac character, as a way to like get justice for the more villainous characters, to have them meet their ends. And I always had to try to push back against that because I didn't want this character to become the same way.
You're cheering him on because he's only taking out the bad, unsavory people. Yeah.
Yes, the way that like the Nightmare Before Nightmare Before Elm Street, like Nightmare Before Christmas and Nightmare on Elm Street, but the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Freddy is like he's a monster, and then by the third one, it's like we love Freddy. He's a wisecracking guy, He
loves playing with his power glove. He loves jokes. So the guy loves jokes.
He loves jokes. He's a natural.
He loves little kids, but he also loves jokes.
So.
So
it was very much structuring it through the point of view of these characters who are affected by it, rather than through the eyes of the killer. And I wanted to almost depersonalityize the killer as much as possible. Because it always got, I rewatched Jason Takes Manhattan for my podcast, the Flophouse podcast, not too long ago. And I forgot how many times Jason sets up traps for people. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like it. Too smart, too clever. Don't like it. I didn't want the character to have like a name. Once you know that Jason, it's funny because it's such a kid's name, but it works for a monster. Once you know he's Jason Voorhees, you're like, oh, he has a birthday, he has a social security number. Like he's less scary to me as a monster now that I know those things.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It subverts a lot of expectations, folks. I recommend it. Obviously, you're here to talk about Hercules, and I have several sort of questions regarding that. By the way, I paid compliment to you, but look at this branding, folks. The man knows how to sell his product.
I know how to put a virtual background on a on a call, at least. But I want to say first, Hercules, if you like Maniac of New York, this is a very different book, but I think you'll still like it. But the body count's much lower.
It is different, but you've written a lot of different books, like you've written some sort of like, closer to all ages stuff at DC. You've written some traditional superhero stuff. And but of course you've done a lot more in like TV and on stage and stuff like that with podcasting. But I am very curious how this one came across your desk, or how your name got put into the mix for, Disney's Hercules. Like, how did that originally come up? Were you like, hey guys, if you ever get the license to Hercules, like call me?
I threw a brick through their window and it had a note tied to it that said, me for Hercules. And they go, oh, we better do what he says. This guy's dangerous.
He's got bricks.
Yeah, exactly. He has at least one brick. He might have more. From my Crazy Cat collection. I wish it was a more interesting story than it is. There's an editor at Dynamite who puts out this book named Nate Cosby, who I had worked with before on a series of online comics that my podcast, The Flophouse, put out. We put out a bunch of online comics called Flophouse Funnies, and all the proceeds would go to charities. And we did one for Puerto Rico after the big hurricane hit there a number of years ago, and
I
one
do
was
remember
for,
that.
I think one of them might have been for Feeding America. I can't remember. I wish it, but I did it. We worked with him on those.
Whatever.
I don't know. I'm not in it for the charity. I'm in it for the fame. And so we worked really well together. I really enjoyed working with him. And he's been at all the different publishers, and he's at Dynamite now. And he had been looking to kind of get me on board with something. And I think it was last year, or maybe the year before last, he said, "We're doing all these Disney villains books. How would you like to write the Hades book?" And I was like, yeah, 100%, like 100,000%. Like, I really like the Disney Hercules movie, and I've always been a fan of Greek mythology. Like, I really love Greek mythology, and I always tell my kids about it. And I talk to them about how you can decode so many paintings and so many works of public sculpture if you know Greek mythology, and my kids have no interest in it, which really saddens me. But I was really excited by it, and because the Hades character is he's a wisecracker. He's a real Freddy Krueger type in that way, just a real wisecracker. And and they gave me the freedom to introduce characters from Greek mythology that were not in the original Hercules movie, and to kind of tell a pre-movie continuity story. And I really enjoyed doing it. I just loved doing it. I thought the book came out really fantastic. And so Nate came back to me when Hades was finishing, and he said, "Would you like to do Hercules and do like a year-long run, like a real long run?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." I to get the opportunity to tell like a longer story that has the space where there can be individual adventures in between, and especially after Hades, to have the chance to work on a character who is a good guy and is like whose values I agree with, and who is noble and heroic and honest and optimistic, as opposed to Hades, who is just a out and out villain all the time. And it was really exciting.
The connection seems to be breaking up just a tiny bit.
Was that mine or yours?
I'm pretty sure it was yours, but
I think it's mine.
But I think you're back. I think you're back. Good. We still got the gist. When you mentioned that you know a bunch of
hello?
Oh, sorry, Elliott. Can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me or no?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Sorry about that. I think
it's okay. It looks like it was.
I'm gonna blame my internet connection. I happen to live in a data black hole in Los Angeles, where it's very hard for any information to escape.
Well, I appreciate you working through. We deal with technical difficulties. This is not like Netflix. This is not Comedy Central. This is one guy in his basement.
It's a great looking basement, but I'll finish with what I was saying and just say that I was very excited to kind of get to do more in that Greek mythology world. And so this is a story that takes place after the Hercules movie, and the characters are trying to move on from that story, but there's a new threat and a new adventure, a new mystery, and lots of monsters and stuff, and lots of me getting to take Greek mythological figures and put my spin on them, which I'm very excited about.
I like that, and it sort of leads into the next question I was going to ask, and I'll just put this up too so that folks can see. The reason we're talking about this, by the way, folks, this hits comic shops this Wednesday.
Wednesday, in 2 days. Yeah,
2 days.
The day after tomorrow.
Does it have anything to do with that? Did we time it right? Does this deal with a giant ice wind rushing at the hero, and he has to outrun the ice?
No, not the day after tomorrow. The movie. I'm sorry, I phrased that wrong. I meant Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday.
Now I wish.
There you go, folks. It has to do with the popular Wednesday.
No. Oh God, I'm miscommunicating.
No, but you were just mentioning that you like Greek mythology, and they've let you roll some of that in. That sounds interesting, because there's not a lot of actually comic books that have dealt with that. We can think of possibly Eric Shanower's Age of Bronze.
Yes.
That's a good example of looking at Greek mythology. Every once in a while, a writer adds a little something to maybe Wonder Woman's backstory. There's not a lot of like Greek mythology that's been heavily adapted for comics. So is that something you that you're allowed to sort of dive deep into, or are we just sort of like, you know, surface level? Like how deep are we going to get with this mythology? Are we going to learn?
Okay, learn what? Well, you might learn a little bit, but I'm not sticking. So I think you're right. It's Greek mythology is these. I consider Hercules like the original superhero. He's the first superhero, and I've said
Yeah.
it. I've said it before. The 12 Labors of the 12 Labors of Hercules is essentially the first maxi series. Like it's the first 12-issue storyline, and the characters are they're so amazing, but at the same time, there's a thing that makes it hard, I think, for them to be used in superhero comics all the time because the Greek gods, and the thing that I find so amazing about them is they're not they're not good guys a lot of the time.
They're not the most savory
No.
individuals.
They're like the most selfish, arrogant people who
A
have
lot of turning into
superpowers.
animals to sleep with women and things like that.
Yes, and so the Disney version of these characters doesn't have that aspect
More traditional,
quite as much.
superhero.
But yeah, but at the same time, there are still there's questions that the Greek myths ask that are also embodied in your traditional superhero comic book stories about what responsibility do we have to each other? Like, why do some people have strength and some people don't? You know, what I say to my kids all the time, there are two great moral guiding posts in my life, Abraham Lincoln and Spider-Man. And Spider-Man embodies a lot of those same questions of what is the difference between fate and free will and responsibility and what you owe to yourself and things like that. How do you take care of others? And Hercules embodies a lot of that also. And so I've been able in the series to bring in a lot of different mythological characters that I haven't seen done in adventure stories before. There's a character that gets introduced in the first issue, Galatea, who is a statue that was brought to life by Aphrodite. In the story of Pygmalion and Galatea, where Pygmalion falls in love with the statue and she comes to life. And I've been having a lot of fun with, well, if the statue comes to life, like it's going to be super strong, super tough. Like it's a living person made out of marble. And but she's full of love for everything in the world because Aphrodite brought her to life. But she's also super strong and super tough. She likes fighting, and she likes but she doesn't know her own strength.
I like that.
And she becomes a character that Hercules can kind of mentor a little bit the same way he was mentored in the movie. But using these characters, you can get into the idea of what is the relationship between a mortal person, a human being, and the universe. You know, at the end of the movie, Hercules chooses not to be an immortal. He chooses to stay as a mortal human being so that he can be with Meg, the woman he loves. And where this story picks up, his family, which includes Greek gods, you know, the gods are his family. They don't really respect or get that decision. Like they still start treating him like a mortal, which is someone who is beneath their notice. And even though he's super strong, he solves a lot of their problems. They're still like, yeah, but you're like just a mortal, right? Like you're not a god. And so a lot of it means playing with that tension, which is very prevalent in the Greek myths of the difference between humans and gods, but in a way that's like fun and kind of silly, but has real adventure stakes. Because the main mystery of this story, I'll tell you how it's structured. Now, you didn't ask, but I'll tell you anyway, is it starts off with a kind of a series of one-issue stories where Hercules has to help a god with an issue that they're dealing with. But by the end of each of those, each issue ends with that god mysteriously disappearing, seemingly abducted by some villainous figure. And the mystery unfolds that someone is kidnapping these gods. Hercules has his suspicions of who it might be, and the gods don't really want to listen to him. They set him to the side because, again, he's immortal. He's not a god, he's not an Olympian. And ultimately, he's going to turn out to be the only one who could save them. But who is this villain?
Yeah, who has the power to abduct gods?
I'm not going to tell you. It's a mystery. You have to read it to figure it out. And is it the person that Hercules thinks it is? Possibly, possibly not. And when Hercules discovers who it is he going to be able to defeat them? Possibly not at first. Possibly in classic 3-act structure, he's going to be laid low and then have to come back for a later victory. And part of the fun of it has been being able to take a series that starts with individual stories and build it into a longer story while still having chapters that each have their own narrative arc. When I was young,
that's a trick.
When I was young, I liked picking up a comic book and getting at least the semblance of a full story.
Yeah,
And
totally agree with you there.
As I got older and you would get more and more superhero comics where it'd be kind of one conversation or one fight for the whole issue, I would get very, I always had I'd always be like, all right, well, that's what I spent my money on this week was like, you know, one fifth of a story. So I'm trying to hopefully balance it both ways, where you can pick up an issue and be like, oh, that was great. But if you're reading the whole story, you'll be able to continue along and follow on this larger adventure.
I love hearing about stuff like that because I'm sort of a nerd for just story structure in general. I just find that kind of interesting, like to find the commonalities. It sounds like you're just putting a good amount of thought into this, which I like hearing. So I'm curious, you know, you've had a lot of success in podcasting and in TV. You know, we don't need to like recap it again. Everybody knows who Elliott Kalan is. No, but I'm
surprised. I mean, a lot of people who don't. You'd be surprised. Huge numbers of people, and it's the. I was recently visiting New York with my family, and we were walking through Brooklyn, and a guy just goes, "Hey, Elliott, big fan," and my kids were like, "What? Like, how does he know you?"
That's awesome.
So
made you look good in front of your kids. That's good.
Exactly. They were very impressed. They thought I was cool for the rest of the day.
I guess my point is that, like, you know, you've had a lot of success in these certain areas, so comics is a very different medium than everything else that you do. What appeals to you about comics that's different? What can you do differently that you can only do in comics, and what do you ultimately sort of want to accomplish in the world of comics?
That's a good question. So in terms of, I'll answer it in the order that you asked it, which is, I mean, I've always been a fan of comic books, or not always. I mean, I wasn't reading them as a fetus, you know, but I mean, I'm sorry, everyone can log off.
Most of us have, but that's okay. We're accepting here.
I appreciate that. But I've been reading them since I was a kid, and I've always loved that there are things you can do by marrying words and pictures, or marrying still images sequentially that you can't do exactly the same way in other media. There's something about a bold image that sticks in your mind for so long. And there's something about words and pictures together that creates kind of interactive experience for the reader, because they have to provide the sound of it, but they also have to marry those elements together in their minds. And when I think of comic books that I've loved, often I imagine them as if they have sound and motion. And it's exciting to me that it's my mind that's providing those elements, you know. And there's so many different types of stories that you can tell with it, because you can provide those images, and but you're not beholden to the kinds of, let's say, like budgetary restrictions that, say, a television show or a movie has. And I've read so many comics of so many different kinds that have stuck with me forever. From like there's from the Amazing Spider-Man issue, was it 33, where he's got to lift all that heavy stuff off of him, and
pretty sure it was 33,
and the panels are getting larger and larger as the pages are going on. Or there's a Tony Millionaire comic, an issue of his series Sock Monkey, where that I find so heartbreaking, that involves a baby bird that accidentally dies, and it's something that I think is more powerful to me, because I'm reading the words, and I'm seeing those images, and I'm putting them together in my head as a reader. And I want to hopefully have that experience with my audience as well. And so
there's an intimacy with comics,
exactly. There's a real, and it's similar to podcasting in that way, where podcasting, you get a very intimate connection, because it's just words going into people's ears while they're driving or doing chores or whatever. And it feels like they're with a friend. And with comic books, it's a similar intimacy. It feels like someone is telling you a story. And it's why it's part of the reason it's so heartbreaking when you find out that the people who make comics are not like all friends that hang out with each other. You know, when I feel like there's I hate to break it with you, that I feel like it's a rite of passage for every superhero reader when you find out that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were not like roommates that loved hanging out, you know.
That might be the biggest understatement we've had on the show. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, they weren't like roommates.
No, not like roommates.
All roommates famously get along.
There's so many famous.
They've made a lot of sitcoms about that.
Sitcoms, there's that. There's
the even
famous
couple.
I was just gonna say that famous Neil Simon play, The Same Couple. Yeah, they're very. But there's a
simpatico.
and I find that there's also something, so I'm not an artist, I'm only a writer. And there's something so exciting about the collaborative process where
Love
you're
it.
you're writing a script, and then the artist is interpret, and you see it visually in your head when you're writing it, and the artist interprets it in their way, and you're like, oh, this is like bringing things to it that I didn't imagine was here. When I work with Andrea Moody on I always pronounce his name wrong, on Maniac of New York, we've worked together for years and I can never pronounce his name right. I love getting his pages in because I'm like, oh, he's like these words are like alive to me now because
That's so
I'm
cool.
seeing them. And I'm working with him on something that has not been announced for another publisher, and it's a story that I feel like is real. Like it's to me an exciting story I've always wanted to tell that I don't think I can do in another medium. And Maniac of New York felt like that to me. And there's something about, as much as I love a lot of the Marvel movies, they never achieve the thrill of seeing those characters on the page in the same
It
way.
is a different. It is different. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
I like a lot of. I love movies. I love TV. I love plays. But comics are personally my passion. That's why I make this show.
Yeah, makes
And
sense. And they're the only people that I get nervous around. I get nervous around comic book professionals. If
that's
I like,
funny.
I met Stan Sakai once at a comic book show, and
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know what to tell him. I don't know what to talk to him about. Like I was so nervous, and it was, there's just
that's
something about
charming.
knowing that these people create these things that is, it's just it just is overwhelming to me.
And I'll let you go shortly because we've already sort of like used roughly the time that I said that I would take. But I do want to say, since you were talking about your collaborators and stuff on Hercules, I believe, and I'll probably mispronounce his name, but George Kambadais,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's Greek, so
he
he must
is.
be bringing a little something there too to Hercules from his background and knowledge, which additive collaboration. It's
Very
really
much
cool.
so. He has a real, I feel like these are when I get his pages in, it feels like these are figures that he's known for such a long time and that he's thought so much about. And the way he handles them feels like, yeah, just like the little details of it and the little like kind of elegant touches he puts on it. It feels like, oh, this is yeah, this is the authentic Greek feeling coming through.
That's pretty
Whereas
cool.
I only know these characters from kind of borrowed culture. It's
Right.
not it's
Yeah.
the thing I grew up with, but I grew up with it as a thing far off away. And it's exciting to work with him on it. I'm so looking forward to seeing how he designs each character that comes up. Whenever there's a character that isn't from the movie, I'm literally looking forward to seeing how George interprets the look of this character. How
He's
he
got
takes.
several filters he has to put it through, but that I mean, and that's what's amazing yeah, there's just so much to respect about the craft of comics.
Yeah,
Um, what was I going to say? Just a reminder, folks, this Wednesday, April 10th, that's issue number 1 of Hercules. Like Elliott's telling us, we're going to have sort of single issue stories building with a sort of a subplot that will build into something bigger. Before I let you go, I'd love to see if I could do a small challenge. And that
sure.
is, on this channel, I recently started also doing a bad movie review show with my friend, comic book artist Jim Mafood.
Oh yeah,
I'm wondering if I could try to find a movie that maybe you haven't like seen before, and if you had a recommendation for me.
sure. I
We
guess
could just try.
only bad ones, or I can't recommend a good one, huh?
It could be bad. It could be like an egocentric project. It could be like, like a Neil Breen type of thing. Like it could be just something
Oh,
like
well,
under the radar.
I haven't seen his newest one yet, Neil Breen's, and I'm
I
so
haven't
excited about
either,
it.
but like I feel like he's actually getting worse as he goes along.
Oh, he definitely is. If he knew anything about traditional film grammar, he is forgetting it as he
Yeah,
makes each movie,
exactly.
as he reinvents filmic language. Oh, it's exciting to see.
Have you ever seen the Spanish movie that's pretending to be set in Boston, horror movie Pieces?
Oh, you know what? It's one that I have not seen, but people have talked to me about.
Okay,
It's one that it's on my list. I should be seeing it. Yeah.
that's my recommendation. Utterly bizarre, bad but fun. Can you think of anything that I should see? Maybe that would be at all connected to the world of comics. If I know that's a challenge, you don't know me super well, but I'll take
Oh, that
whatever
is
you
a
have to
real
give me.
challenge. This is you know what? Hold on. Okay, wait.
I'll
I'm gonna
take
try to think of
anything.
something. Okay. This is not a it's not comics related, but it's, again, one of these stories that in some ways I think would work best in comics and does not work particularly well in movies. You probably have seen it already. This is a bad movie, but it's one that I find enjoyable because you're watching it and you're like, oh, they put a lot of money into making the wrong decisions on these. And that is, if you've ever seen the 90s Island of Dr. Moreau with Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando and
Aware
David
of it,
Thewlis.
haven't seen it.
Okay, it's a movie
There we
that
go.
that one is, it's as you're watching it, you're like, I remember seeing it for the first time it was in theaters, and I've seen it a couple times since then, and being like, there's so many things I want to like they're really going for it. This is a movie about animal men who are running around fighting each other and getting into arguments, and it is at times grotesque. Like, it's the only movie where you're going to see a giraffe human hybrid screaming in pain as it gives birth, and they're really going for it. And the whole time you're like, somebody should have, at an early stage, someone should have stepped in and not let this happen. Because and each time you think the movie is going to pull back and get less strange and go more traditional, it just keeps going it just keeps getting stranger. So that's what I recommend. Yeah.
I thank you. You gave me something I haven't seen. I strongly recommend you check out Pieces. I think you'd like it. But I thought of one last thing about Hercules.
Okay.
Just suppose your comic gets really well, like, everybody loves it, and Disney Plus decided to do an adaptation. What would the theme song be about? Because it's a musical. Like, what would the theme song be about? Like, maybe it'll give us an idea of this comic. What would the theme song be called? Or at least, who would sing it?
Well,
one or the other.
So the thing that I've gotten asked a lot about this series by Hercules fans is, are the muses going to be in it, and are they going to sing the kind of narration songs the way they do in the movie? And I couldn't fit them in to the way I was thinking it. I just couldn't. I couldn't find a way to fit them in that did them justice.
Comics doesn't always have is the audio portion.
It doesn't always have music, and I have a little bit of song stuff in the Hades series because Orpheus is a character in that, and of course Orpheus is the greatest musician of all time. Although my version of him is kind of emo, but not everyone likes his music. But I think it would have to be the muses singing it, but they would be. It would be something about how how you thought that when the first movie ended, you thought everything was all patched up and all the trouble was over, but no. There's more to come, something about it's probably going to be called Mything in Action, like Missing in Action but with myth, and it's because suddenly all these gods are disappearing. That's what's going to be called.
There we go.
They're gonna. If it was my type of show, if I had my druthers, right as they're about to hit the highest note of the song, right as it's about to get its biggest, they would Hercules or Phil, the Danny DeVito character, would just interrupt and be like, we're in trouble. We don't have time for this, and they'd have to and cut off the song. That's how I would do it, I think.
There we go. Thank you very much, Elliott. Sincerely appreciate your time. Best of luck with Hercules. But sincerely, thank you for your time. It was very interesting. Thank you for everything.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And to everybody watching, please do this Wednesday. I hope you check out Hercules #1. It's a super fun book, and it's like a snowball rolling downhill. It just keeps picking up adventure and excitement as it goes on. So I hope you really enjoy it.
I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. Thank you so much, Elliott.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Bye.
That was a pretty exciting guest to have. No? Very different from what we typically get to do. Oh man, I tried not to nerd out too much, folks, but I've definitely been listening to Elliott's podcast, The Flophouse, for ages. I love his comic Maniac of New York. I know it's totally different to talk about Disney's Hercules, but I trust him as a writer, and I'm really curious to read it. I'm sure he'll be able to use a lot of his sense of humor in this book. So I'm excited. Thank you all for the super kind comments throughout too. That just is always fun to sort of look at the side and just see people responding well to it. I wasn't highlighting a lot of comments because I was trying not to necessarily distract the interview too much this time, but you guys were saying some lovely things. I appreciate that. Oh, look at that. Yeah, we will definitely check it out. I think Elliott has done his part hyping it up. Why didn't Marvel do a Disney movie comic? Just because they're the same company doesn't mean that Marvel does everything that Disney owns. Disney will still license some of their stuff, and Nick and the folks at Dynamite are very good at licensing properties and finding the right team. Look no further than what they've been doing with Thundercats lately. 007. You know, they're really good at that. They're really good at that. But yeah, look up Maniac of New York. It's really cool. There's like 9 issues out over 2 series. No, there's probably 10 because there's like another 2 from the current series. But anyway, or 11. I'm good at math. No, yeah, 11. Boy, geez, I don't know. Let's get into the news so that we can keep this moving along, right? That's my job as host is keep everything moving along, moving forward. Look, oh, hello, me. That's nice of you to show up with a big, beautiful, bold thumbnail. Lovely colors. Never hurts to throw a Liefeld character in there. People in the comics sphere seem to be aware of who that is. So let's go with the first news story, which is there is a $6 million Superman. See, I made a pun. I didn't see any news articles with that headline. So yeah, there we go. Action Comics #1 sold for $6 million this past Thursday. $6 million, the most ever paid for a comic. Don't know that we get super excited about that as like a record, but it is something that happened. Heritage Auctions sold Action Comics #1. They should sell Auction Comics #1, but they sold Action Comics #1. Presumably that was some sort of a typo in their job description. So this is the actual book here, and it was given a CGC pedigree grade of 8.5. Apparently had really nice crisp pages, bright colors. Only real flaw is a little bit of wear along the top edge. So very, very good copy. I mean, this is from 1938, folks. Like that's it seems so long ago to me. Yeah, it's wild that this is around. Here's something about how special it is. There's only 2 other unrestored copies that exist in a better condition. So this is in very rarefied company. Breathes rarefied air if comics breathed air. And they say that there's only about 100 copies in total that are estimated to have survived out of the original 200,000 print run. Just amazing. The previous record for a sale was not that long ago. Back in 2022, Superman #1 sold for $5.3 million. That wasn't at auction. That was in a private sale. So yeah, keys are always going to go for that. I think Nick Cage did at one point. I don't know if he still does. I think he sold a lot of his comics. I think he also had a bunch stolen at one point, which is kind of a bummer. I don't know. Maybe it is Nick Cage's if he's got that, but $6 million. The only crazy thing about that is like, who has not just $6 million, but $6 million that they can just sort of say, you know what, like, I would rather own a comic book with this $6 million than, say, even invested in like, a savings bond or something. I have no idea. I have no idea. Nick says he still has Action Comics #1. Okay. And I'm told that he got it back. We should do a poll to discover the buyer. Oh, that would be fun, but yeah, I don't know. I was just amazed. Like, I'd love to think that there's some huge comic fan out there that owns this, but it seems more likely there's some sort of, Saudi royal with oil money that was just like, that sounds like a fun thing to hang up on the on the wall next to the billiards table. I don't know. There's more news than that. Yes, I know. You thought there was just one news item, but there's more than that. Mike Mignola has created this art for another Death in the Family storyline. So if you don't know, because it is going back a ways now. Now, for me, it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but for some others, they'll be like, that sounds like a long time ago. Mike Mignola did the covers for all 4 issues of the Death in the Family storyline that ran through the Batman titles back in 1988. And that was the storyline where readers famously got to call a 1-900 number to vote on whether the Jason Todd Robin would live or die. Famously, like, we killed off Jason Todd. We did that. And DC has announced now Death in the Family, Robin Lives. That's going to come out July 10th with this variant cover by Mike Mignola. And it tells a story where this Robin did survive. It sort of comes out of something I'll talk about in a minute. But this one is written by J.M. DeMatteis, great writer. Art by Rick Leonardi, underrated, I would say. Probably best known for Spider-Man 2099. Really, really good. Jim says that his parents didn't let him call in. They didn't let you use their 15 cents or whatever. Jerks. I think I did call and that I voted for him to live because I couldn't live with myself trying to kill a character off. I'm pretty sure I did call in and say, like, he should live. The original was written by Jim Starlin and Jim Aparo. So I don't know if they would even approached Starlin or not. I wonder. But on a sort of related note, basically in this past December, 2023, DC had released what they called a faux simile instead of a facsimile of Batman issue 428, which featured a few different pages that Jim Aparo had drawn in case Robin was voted to live. It was only like 2 or 3 different pages, and he's still in rough shape, but he lived. So they released that. And now that idea is out there, this is essentially an Elseworld story. So now we've got Jason Todd looking for revenge on Joker. But I just love seeing Mike Mignola return to the world of Batman, even if it's just a cover. So it was cool. Speaking of Mike Mignola, listen to this. He's launched a new anthology that he's going to write and draw and an imprint. Oh my goodness. So he's Mike Mignola. When I say he, in case you thought I was talking about Jack Kirby, he's been dead for decades. Sorry, folks. I hate to break it to you, but that did happen. Yeah, we miss you, Jack. He's collaborating on a new fictional universe. This November, we're going to get the first of this universe. It's called Bowling with Corpses and other strange tales from lands unknown. And that is going to come out through Dark Horse, who these days publish pretty much everything Mignola does. This is going to be the first book in his new Dark Horse imprint called Curious Objects. And it's going to start with Mike Mignola and fellow writer-artist Ben Stenbeck doing this. And it's going to just be an anthology of folklore-inspired fantasy tales, but with no Hellboy. What's an imprint? Fair question. That's when, like, all the books are coming through a creator or set of creators, and that's their brand. Okay, so Image is a publisher, Skybound is an imprint. What else? Things like that. I don't know what else. Danny Earls, you must be up very late, sir, but thank you for the super chat. An all-nighter for a Hulk deadline. Nice to have your company. Nice to have yours. I'm having coffee to get all excited and awake. Good luck with your Hulk deadline. We are all rooting for you. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Sort of like Jim Henson's Storyteller show. I don't know yet until it comes out. But I've always respected how much Mike Mignola loves folklore and how he finds a way. Folklore gets forgotten if it isn't revisited and reimagined. That's just what happens. So this is the kind of thing that keeps that folklore alive, and I love that. Yes, smash that deadline. And while you're smashing that deadline, on a related note, people, I want you to all eviscerate that subscribe button and hit like. Just hit that. That you don't have to smash that, but I want you to absolutely obliterate the subscribe button. Randy Stone is in the room. I wonder if any comic creators went on to become pro athletes, the reverse Danny Earls. I don't think so. I think the best you might get is John Romita Jr. becoming the, softball all-star for the Marvel team back in the 80s. Pretty sure that would be it. But it's funny that Randy is here because today I actually got 2 books that that he published. I got Poor Old Miss West and The Relentless Adventure. I'll talk about those later. But thank you, Randy, for your part in the self-published crowdfunded world. Thank you. Yeah, you can only really demolish it once. Moving on. Valiant has announced their next event, and it's called Resurgence. They're coming back, baby. This is going to be published through Alien Books. Alien Books is who actually publishes the comics that Valiant owns the intellectual property to. It's going to start in September. The storyline is going to center around this weirdo. What else would you call him? Dr. Silk. He's going to gain the ability to reshape the universe. Okay, well, I guess that's a good jumping on point for bringing back the Valiant superheroes and such. Road to Resurgence is going to start in May, building up to the September event, and it's going to include Faith Returns by Jody Hauser and Alita Vidal, Exo Manowar by who? Exo Manowar Invictus. Oh yeah, this one's by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad. So that's pretty cool, actually. Those are some good creators. We've got Rye, The Book of Dark, by Dan Abnett and Emilio Ultera. In June, we're going to get more Alien books here. We're going to get, I guess I didn't include this image, but Ninjak versus Roku. Ninjak versus 6? I guess so. By AJ Amadou and Emiliano Correa. And in July, Eternal Warriors Last Ride of the Immortals will launch. Don't know who's on that one. But I did hear actually from somebody at Valiant Books that explained, a few weeks back I had reported on how Valiant was looking to hire an AI artist of some sort. They wanted to make it clear that was for some sort of internal project that the company Valiant was doing. That had nothing to do with the comics, which are all handled by Alien Books. And they told me, like, only real creators on our comics, just to be clear. Okay, fair enough. Good. Eternal Warriors is Fred Van Lente. Maybe. That would be a good fit. Sure. Turok is not a Valiant property, just to be clear. Yes, Valiant published Turok in the 90s, but that was not an original thing that they created. They created a bunch of their own characters, Bloodshot, Ninjak, etc., Dr. Mirage, but they also licensed stuff from the old Gold Key imprint. That include Magnus, Robot Fighter, Dr. Solar, Man of the Atom, and Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. Those were all licensed, so they do not own those characters, just to be clear. Did I read any Eclipse comics today? My Sister the Comedian. That's actually a pretty good one. Did anybody here get to see the Eclipse? On the West Coast here, it was only going to be something like 30%, and it was cloudy here, so I didn't really see much of anything. It got slightly dimmer. I don't think Dynamite is doing Turok these days. I don't know where it is right now. I don't know where it is. You did. Good. You saw the Eclipse. 99.5% totality. That's amazing. Wow. Saw some of it in Georgia. I got to see it. I did in New York. My sister said 92.5%. I love that you guys are on it with your percentages. 95%, but it was extremely cloudy. Some of it. Eclipso. Yes. I should have made an Eclipso joke post today. Oh, really? Went all the way up to Vermont. Good for her. Good for her. I think she did tell me she was going to do that. But anyway, yeah, I didn't really get to see it, but so be it. Mexico City about... I was trying to say, remember what 30% is in Spanish, and I realized that I do not remember. Yeah, you're not that far from me, Randy, so I think we had pretty much the same thing. Anyway. All right, let's talk about more comics. Enough eclipse stuff. You guys are obsessed with eclipses. What, just because it only happens once every, decade or something? You're going to get excited about it? Whatever. IDW downsized a bunch of staff this week. So just to be clear and to set some context, it was literally last April, the end of April last year, where IDW had laid off 39% of their staff. And then this past week, what they did is they downsized some more by letting some executives go. They didn't have to let as many go, but yeah. Oh, 30%. Arigato, Francisco. So yeah, it stinks that IDW had to do this just for the people involved. Here's the 5 staff positions they let go. Chief Operating Officer Amber Huerta, Senior HR Manager Tamea Spoon, Director of Development Daniela Diorio, Project Manager Dion Carrico, and Group Editor Kirsten. Actually, I think that was meant to be Kristen Simon. IDW released a statement about this, but also Steve Sorensen just gave me $2. Get yourself a slice of pizza. Fave toppings. I'm a simple man. I really like pepperoni. Some people say that is a trash topping, that it's a bad meat, but I like pepperoni. I like it. So that's one of my favorites. But there's all sorts of stuff I like. Let's see. We'll get another Total Eclipse in 2099. Well, Spider-Man, Punisher, Ravage, and Doctor Doom will be ready for that. Comic book joke. Let's see. Who are these people? I mean, I've at least heard of Amber Huerta. The others, not as much. But, they were all executives. Executives get paid more. You cut a few of them. Hopefully that streamlines the business and gives them money. IDW released this statement. They said IDW did make the tough but strategic decision to reduce 5 positions today. This is part of a strategy to create a more efficient IDW and one that will be better able to delight fans for years and years to come. We are grateful for the years of commitment and hard work and wish abundant success to those affected. Hope so. And on a related note, Scott Dunbier, he was the special projects editor. He actually quit IDW this past week, just like a couple days before they released these 5. So that means they've eliminated 6 executive positions. Scott was definitely a well-known figure in this world. He's pretty famous. He's going to start. He said today he's going to start his own publishing company, and he'll have more details on that this July, if everything goes right, at San Diego Comic-Con. He resigned. So not quite the same as being let go. He resigned just before, so who knows? I would say it may have hurt. We don't know exactly what was happening before. They do still have a lot of key properties that do well for them. Ninja Turtles is as big as it ever has been, just to be clear, and Star Trek, I know, is doing very, very well for them, among other things. But Scott is a really interesting, amazing figure in comics behind the scenes. He started as an art dealer. He became an editor for Wildstorm. I believe he left when they sold themselves to DC, when Jim Lee sold to DC. I forget exactly what he did next, because I don't think it was straight to IDW at that point. But then he did get to IDW, and he basically is overseeing the idea of the artist edition, like the comics that are printed at like comic book page size, like really amazing scans so that you can see the original sketches and blue line stuff. They get the license to do a lot of that for like Marvel and DC stuff. That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good point. Godzilla and My Little Pony and Sonic are also really big properties. So IDW definitely still has a number of books that are doing well. I guess they just need to restructure their business. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep up to date. I don't know any more than what they're sharing. Lake Como Comic Art Festival is starting its own podcast. I would love to go to this art festival. There are several in Europe that I would love to go to. But this one, Lake Como, just looks so gorgeous. Last year, Jim Mafood went there, and some of the pictures he was sharing, oh my God, I was falling in love. I've been to Italy, but I've never been to Lake Como. It just looks so, so nice. So anyway, they're doing a podcast. This is ramping up as promotion to their festival, which takes place this year, May 17th to 19th. What they're going to do is they're going to release a new episode of an interview podcast with artists every Tuesday and Thursday throughout April. What language? English. English. It is. Yes. Lake Como was used as a lot of the outdoors for, what was Padme's planet? Naboo? I think it was called Naboo. It's a magical paradise, so fun. Yes, you live a charmed life, Mr. Mafood. Going to exotic locales, selling your art to your friends. Oh, amazing. Enjoy. That sounds great. Anyway, so here's what they're doing. It's hosted, by the way, by Scott Dunbier. It's almost like I planned out the order of news. It's almost like that. Here's some of the guests that they're going to have, not just at the festival, but on this podcast. John Romita Jr., Terry Dodson, Tula Late, Olivier Copiel, Juanjo Guarnido, that's Black Sad if you guys don't know, Sean Gordon Murphy, bunch more. Big names. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, Jim has, travels to these exotic conventions so much that he had enough frequent flyer miles that he flew all the way out to Seattle just to put me in a headlock until I ordered some merchandise that he made. And I was like, Jim, we're friends. I could just PayPal you $10. And he was like, no, I don't take money. You're going to buy a piece of merchandise. That's what he said to me. Can you believe that? Yeah, those are some really nice names. And Black Set is amazing. Harsh but fair. Yeah. It sounds like a fun podcast to me. Whoops, didn't get that right for the order, but so I'll just show it all. Gail Simone, she already has been in the news because she's going to be writing X-Men. Keep in mind, Gail has been out of comics for 4 years. She sort of quietly stepped away and did other things. Not only is she doing X-Men, she's reviving a British horror book, Misty. British publisher Rebellion announced that they will make a special issue of Misty. It's going to go on UK newsstands July 17th. Not sure when it'll get here yet. Headed up by writer Gail Simone. So this anthology is going to have 4 stories, 3 of them written by Gail Simone, with artists Carola Borelli, Ali Fell, Mariana Ignazzi. Sounds like Italians. And then there's a 4th by writer-artist Letty Wilson. This cover is by Tula Late, great cover artist. And if you don't know what this is, it hasn't been around for a while. But Misty was published by a British publisher called Fleetway, started in 1978. It went for over 100 issues, and it was aimed at a young female audience, but it had like sort of light horror stories. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Oh, I didn't know that she was doing Crab Louie for the Minor Threats stuff. That's Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum's comics. Yeah. So that's really cool. But yeah, Fleetway, I think Fleetway was started by it was one of the 2000 AD guys. It's leaving my head right now. But yeah, this was a British publication. I think that it's really cool that it's coming back like this. Oh, let me show you. These are some of the pages. These are the pages for each of the 4 stories. I know that's not humongous there, but the art looks really, really amazing. Really, really good. I think that there's just an audience for it. I think there's just an audience. Yeah. Moving on. Criminal. I talk up Criminal all the time. It's one of my favorite comics out there. I just love the team of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I think that they make fantastic crime fiction across any medium. Anything they do, it's always like a day one by, and I always enjoy it on some level. It's being adapted into a show. It hired directors. So specifically, it's at Amazon, Prime, and they hired directors Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. If you don't know them, they co-directed Captain Marvel. They also co-directed, I'm trying to remember, I can't remember what it was called. Might have been called Half Nelson. It was a few years ago. It starred Ryan Gosling, and it got him an Academy Award nomination. I think it was called Half Nelson. They've made some good stuff, and they're going to direct the first 4 episodes of this TV show. Really, really cool. If you haven't read it, just to be clear, the show is going to adapt an interlocking series of crime stories. They follow different protagonists, slightly different timelines, but it all crosses each other's paths here and there. That was ordered to series this past January, and pre-production is currently going on in Portland. Chris loves criminals and by association crime. Damn, I knew I'd let that slip one day. And today's that day. Well, I had a good run. Did I? Not really. Lock me up, officer. I said that like it was my kink. I don't know why it gives me hard-boiled vibes. Maybe a little bit. I don't know that it's planning to film in Portland. The pre-production is just like the writer's room and stuff like that. But I don't know where they're going to film it. I don't know. Folks, I've admitted it. I don't know everything. Secret's out. Go knock over a liquor store. I might as well, right? I'm too nice. I'd be like, may I please rob you? By the way, this gun isn't loaded, and it's actually a water gun. But don't worry, it's not even loaded with water. I'm too nice. Ed Brubaker, by the way, is one of the 2 showrunners on this. That makes me feel very confident about things. Ghost Machine. They only just launched the imprint technically like this week, but they've got their own coffee. I don't see Robert Kirkman coming up with Skybound coffee. He probably doesn't drink it. Ghost Machine is partnered with a brand called Comics on Coffee. Can you guess what they make? It might just be comic book themed coffee. And they're releasing their own brand of light roast coffee. I do at least like the name Ghost Roast. Ghost Roast. I'm drinking coffee. I like it. Maybe I'll try it. Artist-writer Francis Manipul, he's one of the team, the collaborators on the Ghost Machine imprint, and he explained that they chose a light roast level 1 of 3, a light roast because it contains a bit more caffeine. What do artists need to hit their deadlines? Caffeine. So Danny Earls, working hard, we know, over in Fair Ireland. And of course, they put him on the Hulk, the green character. God, Marvel. So insensitive. So insensitive. He could probably take advantage of this. You can pre-order it if you're so inclined for mid-April shipments. I think that this company also makes a Batman coffee, a dark roast, pretty sure. Geiger coffee would glow in the dark. There you go. A roast in the machine. Hulk should sell matcha tea. Hey, for all I know, maybe he does. I don't spend a whole lot of time in Japan. I like it there, but it's a little expensive. But if you guys want to donate about, I'll say $1,500 tonight, I promise that if I get $1,500 in donations tonight, that I will use it to visit Japan. You don't have to do that. Krakoa kombucha. Beautiful. You check the store and they're sold out? Well, there we go. The pros and cons effect, right? When I went earlier, it was not. That's interesting. This is a quick one. Do you guys know the Results shirts? If you've gone to a comic convention, you may have at least seen them there. They tend to be at a lot of the bigger conventions. They make, comic book and pop culture shirts, jackets, clothes. They use like a material it's a little flexible. It feels like it's got a lot of what's that, like synthetic fabric that it's not nylon. What is it? Synthetic fabric. It's not mostly cotton, but the reason that they have it is that it retains colors very well. So like if you put these kinds of shirts in your wash a bunch, it's still going to show up bright. No, not lycra. Polyester. That's it. I don't know how I would even do this show without you guys here live. Like I can never think of any word that I need. Anyway, so it's not supposed to shrink and the colors are supposed to stay vibrant, but it's Marvel's 85th, and as part of celebrating that, they've got like a bunch of new stuff to celebrate their history. I kind of liked these two. I don't know if I like them enough to buy them. They are something like $70. But like, the corner box art, you guys know I like corner box art. And then this one just has tons and tons of faces of all sorts of characters all throughout. And I was like, all right, those are clever designs. And I see Results, and they've always got like some Godzilla stuff that I want. I don't get it, but I want it. Oh, speaking of Godzilla, EJ Sue, are you in the chat? Sometimes EJ Sue is here. I know he was here earlier. I want to show you guys something cool. Give me a sec here. This is the coolest. Does even if even if EJ isn't here, is anybody in the chat from San Francisco? Let me ask that. Is either EJ here or is anyone from the chat in San Francisco? I'm going to show you something really cool that takes place there. Hold on. EJ's here. EJ did something amazing with Godzilla. I got to show this, EJ. I got to show you. I got to show the other folks here. Wait. And Danny says, Irish and Hulk are green. You forgot the angry part. You're too nice, Danny. I don't see the anger in you. All right. Yeah, you're in the Bay Area? Yeah, okay, you've got something that you got to see. Give me a sec here. I'm just pulling up a different window. I have to do a few things here. Look at this. Look at this. You see this huge mural of Godzilla and King Ghidorah and Rodan, Mechagodzilla, Mothra? Yeah, that is a huge mural that EJ has created. And if you go to the San Francisco Giants ballpark, you can see it. Look at that wall mural at Oracle Park. Tell me that isn't super, super cool. not only that it's there, but just how good it looks. EJ has done tons of covers for the Godzilla books lately, and this isn't comics, but he does do the Godzilla comics covers. And when I saw this, this person like showed this, like I was just like, oh my god, look at how cool that is. Look at it. Are there any? Yeah, that's not EJ. This is just a guy that went to Oracle Park. Godzilla shirts. But look at this. I love Godzilla. I would love to see that. Look at that. Isn't that impressive? It's so well done. You're going to go to a San Francisco Giants game in June? I'd avoid it. I would love to see some pictures, put them up on social if you're able to. Kirk Ireland, going to be there for a game in July. We'll definitely check it out. I love that Mothra. Nice. I just wanted to give a shout out because EJ, just incredible. It will be up for the rest of the season. I hope I get to see it myself. I hope you do as well. And I certainly hope people continue to share pictures of it on social media. I think you knocked it out of the park. Who knows? Maybe it should. Send me photos, guys. There you go. I know I just really stopped the news cold, but I had to share that. I had to. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. Let me go back to the news. Back to the news. That's sort of what they tend to do. They'll put murals up for like one season at a time. A lot of parks will do that with certain walls. They sort of have a rotating exhibit to keep it fresh. But so I have no idea like what that was applied to. But if those panels were able to be taken down so that it could be kept, that would be amazing. I don't know if that's possible. I have no idea. But it's good. It looks cool. If people can at least document it with video and photos and stuff, we can remember it that way. Did you guys come across this? The MCU hired an actress, not an actor, an actress to play Silver Surfer. But there's a little bit of a wrinkle there. So I know Silver Surfer is usually a guy. It's going to be a girl, but it's not the same Silver Surfer we know, to be fair. So Julia Garner. I'll have to do my Julia Garner impression. I haven't done impressions in a while. Yes, Ruth Langmore is exactly right. Folks, I'm going to swear because I'm going to give you my perfect Julia Garner impression. Julia Garner as Ruth Langmore from Ozark. I'm going to swear, okay? So you have a moment to get ready. Here it goes. I don't know shit about fuck, Marty. There we go. I just nailed it. So yes, she has been announced to play the Silver Surfer in next year's Fantastic Four movie. All I can say, folks, is everything I've seen her in, she's a really amazing actress. Her character on Ozark was arguably the most interesting. She was also really good on The Americans. And what was that? She did like a Netflix movie about like a real life girl that was like swindling people. Anna something. I can't remember right now. She's just a really good actress, honestly. She sincerely is. So I'm not against this. Let me just say, I'm not. Interestingly, they noted in all like the announcements that she's playing Shala Bal, not Norrin Rad. In the comics, Norrin Rad becomes the Herald of Galactus, right? To spare his planet. But that means that he never gets to really go home, and he never gets to see his beloved, his girlfriend, Shala Bal. Well, in this, they're saying that Shala Bal becomes the Silver Surfer. It makes you wonder, first of all, could there be more than one Herald of Galactus? Is she playing Silver Surfer, or is she playing something more like Nova? I don't know. I'm just saying that maybe that's possible, actually, and they don't have this quite right. But she is playing Shala Ball, not Norrin Rad. So, we're also dealing with multiverse stuff this phase. So, look, here's my ultimate takeaway in this. Because I know a lot of people are like, no, what? They're putting a girl instead of a guy. They're like, gender swapping it. I'll just say, a naked silver girl instead of a naked silver guy. Personally, I think I'll be okay with it. I think I'll be okay with that. Personally, maybe it's not for everyone. Who knows if it works? She's a good actress, and I'm okay. We'll see. There have been many heralds over the years. Fire Lord, Terrax, a bunch of them. I'm just saying that it's possible something could be a little different. Yeah, Norrin Rad in this universe is a total coward, and he's like, take her. We'll see. The fact that she isn't like that, she's literally called Shala Ball. I'm like, okay, you know what? It is different than the comics, but it is a real character from the comics that I can easily believe, because the movie universe is not literally the comics universe, and I am okay with certain little changes if it benefits the story. We'll see. I hope it works. But yeah, oh, thank you. Yep. Airwalker, Dazzler, the Destroyer armor. Galactus also had his Punisher robots, which has nothing to do with the Punisher. Anyway, I'm open to it. I want the movie to be good because I do love Fantastic Four. I love that they're a family. I love that they're explorers. I think that that's always differentiated them from both the X-Men and the Fantastic Four within the world of Marvel. But yeah, I want it to work. We'll see. Marvel just today announced some new X titles. They shared this on Twitter. They shared hints at the next 3 X-Men books. We'd already seen the creative teams announced for the first 3 books, but now that we get a few more. NYX. These are all for July. NYX says 5 mutants alone in the big city. Welcome back to the real world. Okay, so that's probably some sort of a young teen book. Doesn't seem like they're affiliated with the X-Men or Professor X's school. Just seems like they're mutants trying to survive on their own in New York or something like that. We've got Phoenix. Jean Grey is Phoenix. Life, fire, power, possibility. One woman alone in the cosmos. So maybe that goes away from Earth and starts playing with the more cosmic side of Marvel. Silver Surfer, Guardians of the Galaxy, Adam Warlock, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I know, Shin Mateus. It is obscure for them to put mutants in the MTV reality show The Real World, but that's Marvel for you, on the cutting edge. I don't know if she's if she's going full Captain Marvel, but it could be interesting. And finally, I had this one. The world is broken, and Forge knows how to fix it. That's his superpower, is he can make anything. His secret weapon is X-Force. So it sounds like this time Forge is the impetus behind the X-Force team. X-Force has always been the idea, sort of like a proactive team going out to solve a problem as compared to reacting to like a villain attack. They're saying like things need to be changed. X-Force is going to go out and change it. Maybe not as a field leader, but maybe as like a director or something. We'll see. I love the current Fantastic Four run. I think it's fantastic. Forge could literally make the best sandwich. Yes, I made an episode about it. I agree. The best X-Force run, in my opinion, too, was the Rick Remender. Jerome Pena was definitely one of the big artists on it. It kind of got a bunch of different artists. Phil Noto was in there. A bunch of people. Mark Brooks did a couple issues, I think. I don't think Forge has ever been a leader. He's been a key figure in lots of stories, but I'm pretty sure he's never led any of the teams. I can't think of a run where he was the leader. There was the Mystique book that was written by Brian K. Vaughan, and Forge was sort of her weapons supplier. She went on sort of secret missions, kind of like a spy. Well, maybe I will get to go to Japan. Look, $5. Live stream is my solace this week. Comics are exhausting. Backlash to Ed Piss score. Backlash to the backlash. What's cancel culture? So tired of politics. I am too, because none of it will bring people back. I want to try to unite people with the medium that we all love. We will see. We will see. But thank you for the super chat. That's very kind of you. Very kind of you. Got a little bit more news and a lot of comics to look at, so let's keep moving. Rob Liefeld is going to pen a memoir. I'll tell you something. I'm going to read it. I absolutely want to know about Rob Liefeld's life from his perspective. I absolutely do. So it's going to be called Robservations, which is also the name of his podcast. A publishing company called Ben Bella. I don't know them, but Ben Bella Publishing announced that they would be releasing this book early next year. We shall see. Here's a quote from Liefeld. I have had a lifelong love affair with comic books. They have been my passion since I was 7 years old. Having been fortunate to break into the business as a teenager in the 80s, I've seen 5 decades of tremendous change, quite a bit of upheaval, and a fair amount of rebellion and betrayal, some of which I started. It's been quite a ride, and I'm eager to share this incredible ride with everyone. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm up for it. I'm up for it. I don't even... Yeah, I don't care, I don't think it matters, what my opinion on his art is. I think he would definitely have interesting stories to share. He's been in the business for a long time. 4 decades? No, 80s, 90s, 2000s, the 10s, and now the 20s. That crosses 5 decades. Yeah, he's worked in all five of those decades. He's not saying that he's worked for 5 decades. He's worked across 5 decades. So we'll see. We will see. Can we trust everything that he says literally? No. Keep in mind it's coming from a biased source. It's him telling his life story. I know he grew up in Orange County, the son of a preacher, but he did break in very, very young. He really did. We'll see. Long as I'm talking about Liefeld, he was in the news for something else this week. Avengelyne got some people behind it to make a movie. Do you all remember the character Avengelyne? It's not quite up there with Youngblood, admittedly. Maybe not even quite up there with Bloodstrike, but, it was a thing. It was a thing. Olivia Wilde, Margot Robbie, and producer and actually director of Dark Phoenix, Simon Kinberg, are joining forces to make a movie based on Avengelyne. Presumably Olivia Wilde would direct. The others are so far just producers. They're not saying that Margot Robbie will be the star. They're not even saying that Simon Kinberg would write. But I believe they said that Olivia Wilde was tapped to potentially direct. Yeah, there is no studio developing this. This is they've joined forces to start a small production company. They're going to shop it around to the movie studios, streaming outlets. We'll see if anybody picks it up. There's nobody attached to necessarily star in it yet. So this is early days, but those are some big names, so it might be enough to generate interest in moving forward, getting a budget. There were previous attempts to turn this comic character into a movie. Back in 2013, Gina Carano was attached to star. Might have dodged a bullet with that one. I don't know. She can be good within a certain range. But anyway, and in 2016, Akiva Goldsman was attached to write a version. Neither of those went anywhere. They just got sort of stuck in development hell and fell apart. The comic, if you didn't read it, is about an angel who fights evil, including demons. No, I don't think Olivia Wilde would star, just to be clear. Yeah. I'm not against it. You know, it's because some of the things that he's done have actually been good. He's his quality level is all over the place, but boy, I'm stumped off the top of my head, but I know that Akiva has worked on a couple things that I've enjoyed. I think, for instance, the Constantine movie with Keanu Reeves, I like that as a story in a movie. I do. I think that was him. Yes, they're going to hire Evangeline Lilly. So we'll see if this happens. Let's see. Back in the House days, I thought she would have made a good Wonder Woman. House days. Hold on, I'm slowly piecing this together. You mean House was a TV show? Oh, did Olivia Wilde star on that TV show? That makes sense. That must be what you mean. I didn't watch House, but that Olivia Wilde must have been on that show, right? I think I put it together. Lost in Space isn't what I'd point to as like a good thing that Akiva made. That I would also not point to Batman and Robin. That's what I mean. He's hit and miss. Okay, thank you, Randy, for confirming that. I did like Fringe a lot. That is something that I liked a lot. Yeah, that was a good show. And he wrote A Time to Kill. Time to Kill was good. Yeah, Time to Kill was good. Beautiful Mind. That's one. That's one that I was thinking of. That's what I mean. Like it's crazy to think A Beautiful Mind and Batman and Robin are like the same person, but yeah. You know? We need to move on, folks. There's more news. As long as I'm talking about Liefeld, here's the last piece that's sort of related to him. New Mutants number 98 is going to be reprinted in 3D. Did you think that 3D hit its apex with Friday the 13th Part 3D? Or My Bloody Valentine 3D? Or Jaws 3D? Or House 3D? Wrong on all four counts. This is where 3D finally hits its apex. This is where 3D comics are finally not a gimmick and are here to last. Or maybe it's just a fun one-off. We'll see. Erasmus Fox has a licensing deal to adapt some key Marvel comics into 3D. They're being released through Pan-Universal Galactic Worldwide. I don't know them, but that's why this PUGW at the bottom is here. And so the first release they're doing is New Mutants number 98, first appearance of Deadpool. I believe it was also the first appearance of Domino, and also Gideon. Yeah. You remember Gideon, right? He was an external, a mutant immortal. That didn't stay around too long, did it? Mutant Immortals. Cannonball was originally one that sort of went away. I think Gideon also went up against the New Warriors and Speedball punched him hard once. I don't remember Gideon's powers. But anyway, yes, presumably this is to appease the legion of Gideon fans. It's time that they get their due. Yep. The only guy who stuck around after. Yep. Deadpool, Domino, hard to remember them. Gideon, think we can pretty much count on Gideon being a really important character in Deadpool and Wolverine and Gideon, that movie. That Domino was really copycat. Well, that was a retcon, though, wasn't it? They didn't intend that at the moment, I don't think. What else do I have to say about this? Important stuff. Oh, okay, so after they do New Mutants 98, here are some other ones that they plan to give the 3D treatment to. Deadpool number 1 by Joe Kelly and Ed McGuinness. X-Men number 1 by Jim Lee and Chris Claremont. Black Panther number 1 by Jack Kirby. I have to admit, I would be very curious to see Jack Kirby in 3D. I think he has had some things done in 3D before, maybe like Captain Victory or something, but that doesn't sound bad. That doesn't sound bad. And also Hulk number 340. That was the battle between Hulk and Wolverine by Todd McFarlane and Peter David. Hey, Bronze Age Nerd. Great channel if you folks aren't watching. Bronze Age Nerd does some great comic book content. Will I see you at the Washington SummerCon this year? If so, I will recognize you. Don't think Jerry Lewis ever had a 3D comic, but the only reason I say think is they definitely made Three Stooges comics in 3D, so it's possible. It's possible. All right, I'll keep my eye out, or we'll talk beforehand so that I can say hello in person this time. So yeah, some 3D comics. Hey, sometimes it's a fun gimmick. Sometimes it just gives you a headache. You tell me. You tell me. Kirby created Captain 3D. That's what it was. That's what I'm thinking of. I knew I talked about it in my episode on Comic Tropes about 3D comics history. Sounds like some of you folks aren't watching my Comic Tropes episodes. Heartbreaking. All right. Dynamite. We started the show talking about their Hercules book. We're going to keep talking about Dynamite. They got the Terminator license. It's the 40th anniversary of Terminator, folks, and they got the Terminator license. Let's talk about what this entails. It's kind of fun. So, Studio Canal is the rights holder to the Terminator intellectual property at this point, and they announced that they have partnered with Dynamite to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the original film. What will happen is Dynamite is starting with reprinting a bunch of existing Terminator stories by other publishers that have had the rights to it. I believe that I saw at least in one or two articles, it said that they were able to create new stuff. I don't know for sure if that's true, but yeah. The first offering is a crowd-funded campaign. Went live today to get up to 3 volumes. You could just get 1, you could get 2, you could get 3 volumes reprinting the Dark Horse and Now Comics books in their release order. By the way, Now Comics, not always remembered super well. First published work of Mr. Alex Ross. And if you don't know, this cover has a secret. Yep, The Burning Earth was Alex Ross. That is Alex Ross's first comics work. And apparently he wasn't having a wonderful time working with the folks at this, because this is like obviously a view through the Terminator, right? And this is all just technical gobbledygook. Well, not necessarily. If you read backwards and up, it says, or now, just backwards. Now, comics blows. That's what he wrote. If you read it backwards, it's a WONXIMOCZOLB. Now comics blows. He snuck that one in there. He was not happy. I don't think that they were paying him in a timely manner. So just a little bit of trivia for you folks. But honestly, not bad comic. I've got it. I own that one. It's good. It's good. So yeah, they're reprinting a bunch of those stories. You know, Dark Horse was like printing stories since 1990. That's a long time ago. Here's the link if you want to get in on it. So it's a crowd-funded campaign. You can get these comics now. I hope that they will create some new ones. I like Terminator. I like the idea of Terminator more than the overall sort of like whole franchise, because I'll be honest, I did not care for 3, 4, 5, or 6 all that much. I liked the end of the third one. I liked some of the ideas and the acting in the latest one. Genesis was probably the worst. No, yeah, it was the worst. But the comics are pretty cool, and I'll tell you what was really good. I've said it before. The Sarah Connor Chronicles. 2-season show on Fox. So good. So good. The first 2 movies are great. First one's horror, second one's action. That's fair. Some people like it, some people don't. The first two movies are great. The first two movies are great, and the TV show is also great. There are only 2 Terminator movies. I think that like one of the things is they really need to like sort of let the idea of Schwarzenegger go. He's good. He's really good. It's an iconic performance, but Terminator should be bigger than Sarah Connor or the Arnold Schwarzenegger looking T-800, you know? Yes, severely underrated. Summer Glau Rock. She was really good. That was within her range. It was really good. If you haven't seen it, look for it, folks. Sarah Connor Chronicles is legit good TV where they have interesting subplots about how everything, like Terminators keep getting sent back, and we eventually learn that like everything that Sarah Connor and John Connor and this Terminator that like they're allied with, that they're doing is slowly changing the future. And there's like more than one faction of Terminators. It's crazy. It's crazy. But you only like get hints at it because, you know, you're only getting like bits from the people that are coming back from this constantly changing future. Really interesting. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, Lena Headey killed it as Sarah Connor. She was so good. So good. I talked this up when it came out. I've talked before, first of all, I made an episode about the manga. Slam Dunk is one of my favorite manga. I'm not a big basketball fan, but I love Slam Dunk. It's fantastic. It's action-packed. It's funny. There's character work. Well, there was a movie, and I loved it. And I've been waiting for the Blu-ray. Finally, this week, we got some news. The animated adaptation of Takehiko Inoue's Slam Dunk, which was called The First Slam Dunk, and it's directed, by the way, by Inoue. It's going to come to Blu-ray June 25th. Day one purchase for me. The Blu-ray is going to be released in 2 versions. The first one was the one that they released more details on. It's going to have limited edition sticker sheet featuring the Shohoku team uniforms and bonus features like an interview with the director, an English dub featurette behind the starting lineup, color commentary with the English dub team, the people that like did the voices in English, and trailers for the film. And then a second version is going to come out with all sorts of other subtitle options for like different languages later in the year. I don't know much about that yet. Yes, legends. It's so good though, folks. It's so good. The fact that they could digest all 31 volumes into just like one rock solid movie is amazing, but it really does work well. It's a good adaptation. Last piece of news I have is that the Tokyo Revengers mangaka is launching a new series. Tokyo Revengers is a pretty big hit, so anything he creates next should probably make some waves. Let's see. Next Monday, that issue of Weekly Shonen Jump is going to be feature a new story by Ken Wakui, and it's called Nagai no Astro. The first chapter is said to be 58 pages long and include a color page, and apparently will show up on the front cover of Shonen Jump. When they say the first chapter is 58 pages, I don't think they mean that they're putting all 58 in one issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, but I'm not sure. The story is said to involve outlaws battling supernatural elements, but most of the details have been kept pretty quiet. It's anticipated, but not many things are known. If you don't know, the Tokyo Revengers manga wrapped up in November of 2022, but the anime adaptation is still ongoing. They haven't finished adapting everything there yet. So yes, Shin Matthias, Tokyo Revengers, the manga did complete its story. It's a good manga. I like it. Oh man, if you haven't read Tokyo Revengers, it deals with delinquents in the 90s. I think it was the 90s. Might have been the early 2000s now that I think of it. And basically gangs that are fighting each other. But more than that, it literally involves this guy who can go back in time with his current memories into his younger body, and he's trying to change the lives of his fellow delinquents, his friends and stuff for the better, and save the life of his girlfriend. It's amazing. So we'll see. That's that. That's that. Let's talk about some comics that came out this week. Shall we? I think we shall. Let me add a camera here. And this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun to talk about. Zoom that out. Oops. Hold on. I've got it in. Yeah. Hold on. I've got it in a manual focus instead of autofocus so that it doesn't like annoy us all with it's just very finicky. It's going to take me a moment. It's going to take me a moment. Yeah. Okay, there we go. I got it centered. Let me move something around. Oh, cool. Yeah. Isn't it unique and like just has really witty, clever dialogue? I was really impressed with that. Oh, Erwin, thank you for sending me Sewer Boys. If you folks didn't see, I did a live stream a couple days ago with the things that people have sent to my P.O. box, and one of them was this really fun book called Sewer Boys. I don't have it right here. It's really good. I'm going to start real quick with a look at the one thing from Ghost Machine that I picked up. I didn't pick up Geiger or Rook. Just didn't interest me as much. But Redcoat, I'm a big fan of Brian Hitch. So I picked this up, and I like it. I'll tell you why. First of all, of course, you can sort of look. You either like Brian Hitch's art or you don't. I do. I think it's fun. I think it's action packed. I think it's detailed in all the right ways. It's easy to read for me. In this, there are supernatural elements back in like 1775. Basically, it implies that the founding fathers of America had access to certain magics. Exactly what? We don't know. That's a question to be answered. But through a confluence of events, there's this sort of low life who has no special skills or aptitude. He is one of the Redcoats. He really just took it for a job. He's a bit of a coward. His name is Simon Pure. He's anything but. He's a rapscallion. What else can you call him? But he ends up accidentally taking immortality, which was intended for Benjamin Franklin. He becomes an immortal. And he goes through time, like without much money, just always getting into trouble. Always getting into trouble. He's not an especially good fighter or anything. He does eventually become a good marksman. Here's why it works, though. Okay, that's the premise. That's some of the premise. I'm not going to give you all the details or exactly where it goes, but it's tongue-in-cheek. A lot of this is tongue-in-cheek. I mean, you can even tell from some certain little panels, like, the way, like, that's an exaggerated run right there. That's an exaggerated run. Like, it's a little, it's funny. It's funny, okay? So I like this. I'm going to stick with it. This is written by Jeff Johns, and I'll be honest, I don't always love Jeff Johns. I can find some of his work, I'd call it derivative, but some may argue. I don't think he's outright bad. It just doesn't always speak to me. But this, it's pretty funny and an interesting bit of a sci-fi or at least supernatural story. Yeah, Cowardly Captain Jack Harkness, Highlander by way of Barry Lyndon. These are good observations. I like Barry Lyndon, by the way. That's not anybody's favorite Kubrick. Probably isn't my favorite Kubrick, but I like it a lot. But I like Kubrick. I don't know. It works for me so far. So we're going to follow this guy sort of through time, and he sort of makes his own problems is all. he's got opportunities with his long life to better his situation, and he doesn't. He just doesn't, folks. And in a way, that kind of makes him charming, that he just doesn't get it right. Yes. Eli, nice to see you, by the way. One of the books I reviewed in that opening of the P.O. Box stuff, by the way, Eli published. Cosmic Lion publishes all sorts of cool indie stuff. There's a book by a guy named Tony Wolfe that's a biographical book. So, no, I didn't read Junkyard Joe. I'm aware that it exists, but I didn't read it. But I do agree. Yeah, Barry Lyndon is your favorite. That's nice. It's good. It's really, and I agree with Eli here that it is beautiful. None of the shots in Barry Lyndon have, say, a track where the camera is going to like move. They'll do zooms, but the camera is very stationary. It doesn't like pan. It doesn't like move around. It's never on a crane, because every shot is framed with natural lighting and like not a lot of camera movement, so that it all intentionally sort of looks like a painting to just help this period piece feel like what we think of when we look at period pieces, because we look at paintings. Very, very like clever. Kubrick really thought through every element of how he was going to make a movie, from like specifically what music he wanted to use, what he wanted it to like, imply and work as subtext, to like how he would film shots, and the all natural lighting and camera decisions he makes with the cinematography of Barry Lyndon is very interesting. It's very technical. That's not for everybody, but I do admire it. I admire it a lot. I'm a nerd for this stuff. So anyway, Redcoat actually pleasantly surprised me. I think if it was done completely serious, I would have been like, you know what? I've seen Highlander. So if it was completely serious, I probably wouldn't be too into it, because it has a bit of a sense of humor and a big underdog, because he's so flawed. I kind of like the fun of it. I kind of like the fun. I got 2 books this week. Actually, just to be clear, sorry. I got 3 Kickstarter books that all arrived on the same day. 2 of them from Randy Stone, who's in chat. Randy has his own sort of small press. It's called Altruist Comics. And in this, a character that he co-created, this is Lainey Choi, the Bullet from the book Bullet Adventures. She's a super speedster. And then this is a character created by some other creators. She's called, what is she called? I have to look it up again, because I hadn't read her superhero stories before. Bear with me as I find it out. The Lark. And the premise just laid out in the first page. We're not going to get into like lots of weird crossover stuff, since these do come from 2 different creators and everything. They just say, guess what? Sometimes multiverses line up. Like sometimes they overlap and people get to meet each other. It just happens. They're not aware of it. It's just happening. So in this, these 2 characters get to meet each other, and they both have different sort of like issues with being a superhero as like a young woman, and like how they relate to their parents. Like Lainey's hiding it from her mom, whereas the Lark, her mom knows and is really worried that she'll get hurt. And they just have a light adventure where they meet at a corn-themed festival. A corn-themed festival with an evil chef that has fire powers. And she makes fire animals. This is just good, fun superhero stuff. I think that the art is very, very good. It came out in a really timely manner. So every time this is why I keep supporting Randy's Kickstarters. Every single one, the artists and writers all say that they got paid, and the book comes out in a timely manner. So, how can you not support that kind of stuff? That is giving people potentially an entry point into the industry. I do go to New York often. Check out the Museum of Moving Images. They have an entire exhibit on the making of 2001. Noted. Thank you. Oh, yeah. There's popcorn stuff. There's some really fun gags and puns and stuff. But it's essentially two young girls that are superheroes, and it plays it all pretty light. It's light adventure. And sometimes that's just really fun and charming. And you don't feel like, I don't know, that you have to know a bunch of continuity, or that, the writer is trying to push some big idea on you. It doesn't mean that it's nothing. I'm not saying that it's like air and that like when you're done, there's nothing. I'm just saying that it's charming. It's charming and it's fun. And the characters use their powers in unique ways. I like supporting stuff like this. I do. And again, Bullet Adventures is also an ongoing Kickstarter book. Issue 5 just got successfully funded. Really nice. Really nice. And here's another thing that Randy published. And what's interesting is Randy does write and draw, but these are ones that he's really just managing the Kickstarter, editing, and sort of bringing the people together. Poor Old Miss West is essentially a horror idea of an element of Wizard of Oz, where like it's more like the Wicked Witch of the West, if she was in the real world, was getting tormented by Dorothy and her friends. See, like Miss West is, a retiree, and she just sort of imagines things like the lion attacking her. There's some really creepy imagery of, say, like the Tin Man climbing out of a tractor. The scarecrow. I mean, that's a kind of easy one to turn into like, a literal scarecrow. Yes, Randy's pointing out that he did draw this cover. It's a good cover. Faces are always good. Faces are always a good way to get in. She's going through all this horror stuff. There is a twist to everything that's happening. It's a one and done story for the most part. I mean, I guess they could do more, but it tells a complete story. I thought it was well done. I do. So congrats, Randy. It's hard for me to come down like super critical on something that's, made with so much passion. It's one of the reasons I love going to artist alley at conventions, and I love going to like small press comic conventions, is the passion involved for comics and storytelling. And as somebody that has a really good idea, I'll also like forgive a little bit of the execution if I feel like they've just got a story that they want to get out there. I'll go with it. I'll invest some of myself, my imagination, to make it work. Whereas if it's coming from like a big publisher that has tons of resources, like a Marvel or something, I want that to be really well done. I'm not going to be as forgiving for any sort of, half-assedness. There's money behind that stuff, Yeah, Artist Alley is where it's at. You like the concept, like the cover. Altruist Comics on Kickstarter. At some point, Randy, you really need to think of a way for like, the people that are finding out about this stuff afterwards. Like I'm telling people about it and they're like, oh, this is cool, but now they've got FOMO. How are they going to get it? So you need to like find a way to have like a print on demand for some of this stuff. Maybe you've already figured that out and I don't know where you're doing that through, but figure out a print on demand that, is called like, with a variant cover to market as like, second print or something like that. This was cool to get. This is huge. This is gigantic. I think everybody here knows that I like Bone. I've made an episode about it. I make no bones about it. I like Bone. Phrasing. I like Bone by Jeff Smith. Still phrasing. I like the comic book that's called Bone, drawn and written by Jeff Smith. There we go. There we go. You've got copies. Good. So hit Randy up. He's not hard to find on social. For the longest time, Jeff Smith said that he didn't want to release the comic strips he made about the characters and ideas from Bone that he did when he was in college. From 82 through 86, he had a comic strip. But he always said he didn't want to like sort of revisit that, but I guess something changed. He changed when he like sort of realized like no, people really want to see this. Let me zoom out because this is like a long form one. I don't want to crop it as much. So this just came through. I haven't had time to read it all. What's funny is like you look at this and you're like, okay, I look at these people and I can tell that it's Jeff Smith art, right? But the way he draws the Bone characters isn't quite developed enough. And they're clearly interacting with people. And, you know, it's got a lot of humor to it. It's also called Thorn, Tales from the Lantern. So it's got all sorts of supplementary material, the story behind the scenes of what was happening at Ohio State and his inspirations and stuff. But I think what's really cool, just flipping through this, is you can literally see his evolution as an artist as he tries new things with lighting and shading, and the characters start to look more and more like we know them in the Bone comic strip. It's really, really cool. But there are like, you know, you see like Rockjaw, you see rat creatures, you see Thorn and her grandma. I don't know if I said dragon. You got like Phone Bone and Phony Bone. Just huge. Like look, just so many pages. Oh, and then like some of his extra stuff that he did in here. Yeah. You know, but can you imagine? Like, he was basically every 3 days or so, he was putting out a comic strip while going to college. That's a lot of work. So here we are. We're at 1984 instead of 1982, and it looks a lot more familiar to me. But it keeps getting even better. He keeps coming up with little techniques and stuff as we get into 85 and 86. It's not all perfect or anything. And then there's an interview. So there's a lot of supplementary material in this. This is a massive, massive tome. Humor in Bone? No, I know. But I'm just saying it's more of a humor strip here than an adventure comic. Oh, did you really? You shared it together? That's nice. Bone will always come off like Walt Kelly's Pogo. No question, that's a humongous influence. This is a Bone tome. I hope he's doing well too. I mean, at least he and his wife got this out, so I'm hoping that indicates that he's doing all right. He got it out in a pretty timely manner, all things considered. Like he got this out pretty fast, to be honest. And I know almost all of it existed before, but putting this all together couldn't have been easy. It's a great, great book. I cannot wait to really dive into it. I like Jeff Smith. I like Bone specifically. A couple other comics that were good this week. Do I have as much to say about all of them? Not a lot about every single one. The latest issue of Deep Cuts. I think this is the last issue of Deep Cuts, which has been a book by writers Kyle Higgins and Joe Clark, charting the history of jazz music. You know, a very American art form. And a lot of different influences depending on the decades. Well, we're finally up to the 70s. And this follows a story of, just a band who are sort of, they're each looking for different things. The two main people, like, the girl is being offered a solo career and she feels guilty that she's going to leave like this band. And this guy who's just looking for like an inspiration and an influence to sort of take his music to the next level. Very stylized art, but it works very well within the context of this story. You wouldn't necessarily think a story about musicians, just music, no evil emperor to defeat. No fight scenes or anything would necessarily be interesting. But boy, was this a quick read for me. I found every issue of Deep Cuts fascinating. They're all done by a different artist. They're all focusing on different characters in a different decade. So they each stand out very well independently. I strongly recommend it. You'd probably be surprised at how interesting you find it. It's a strong book. Dave Chisholm's Music Comics. I don't think I know those, Eli. You love comics about music. I do too. And it's such a challenge, I bet, to represent music. In the interview at the beginning of the show, I was like, joking around with Elliott about how music is the one thing it can be very hard to represent in comics because you don't really have a way to make audio. I mean, comics have done things like a supplementary record or a supplementary podcast, and that's nice. But the comic itself can't really do audio, but you can represent the ideas of music and the themes of music and the feelings that it evokes. So you can do certain things. You did a book about Charlie Parker and Miles Davis for Z2. I know Z2 makes a lot of music comics. Okay, got it. Wait, was he really? Oh, wow, that takes me back. Jazz Maynard is incredible. Very cool. Very cool. I like that it's a challenge to represent audio stuff in comics. I've seen them use literal sheet music, but like as an art, like so that like you could actually play the music that's being shown across panels. I've seen links to, like the music that either inspired or was made for that book. So there are certain things you can do to pair with a comic, but otherwise you have to just sort of like, if you're going to talk about the music, you have to focus on the people and the history and the feelings. It's pretty cool. Mahfoud's Kick Drum Comics was amazing, but Dave has the best music in comics. He's a jazz teacher too. That's really nice to know. Just for the record, Kyle Higgins does play jazz music. He went to school and studied it. So there's a passion and a love and a reverence for jazz music that's coming through here. And I believe Joe Clark has history with music too. Are you going to check out the autobiography comic about MF Doom? Potentially, yeah. I liked MF Doom, so I would definitely be interested in something like that. The cover here is by Chris Burnham. Chris did the covers for each of these books. Soon to be seen on Ninja Turtles. We'll see what happens. What else? The James Bond comics by Garth Ennis and Rafa Labasco are actually pretty fun. I'm not going to talk a lot about it because it's just an adventure action comic, and your mileage of how much you like Ennis will vary. No matter what, I think everybody can admire a Dave Johnson cover. Fantastic cover. What's funny about this, I'll just say, is this does feature James Bond in space, which we've only seen in Moonraker. And he's about to get betrayed by somebody in space, but he's thought ahead and he snuck something into his attacker's suit before that attacker approached him. It's a great subversion where you think James Bond's in trouble, and then you realize, no, James was a few steps ahead of like his assassin. So that's very entertaining, but I don't want to like spoil anything like big in this. Let's see. Reminds me of how Ratatouille tried to represent taste in animation. That's a good point. That's true. You can't really represent I was going to say, like, the only thing you can't do in comics is sound, but you're right. You can't do smells or taste either. So, you have to be clever with how you do it. No Jaws. This is very much, to be clear, and here's why Jaws isn't in it. Jaws was from the movies, and I love the movies. I love them. This is very much based on the novels. It's not specifically based on any of the comics. I mean, the movie stuff. It's specifically based on the ideas in the novels, which the movies basically do adapt. So this will seem familiar, but it's not going to riff on any movie ideas specifically. You could do scratch and sniff comics. You could. Oh, absolutely. Dave Johnson is somebody I admire so much. He's an incredible artist, just incredible. If you haven't read his early like Super Patriot comics that he did with Eric Larson, so good. The Thor comics right now are really fun. It's starting to like shape up into like an actual story. And the what's important though is that like Thor is dealing with an enemy, Minotaur. Let me get to him. And by the way, Minotaur looks awesome these days. Let me show you. Where is he? Okay. Look at it. Look at him. He was used by Al Ewing in his Immortal Hulk run and had his face sort of like blasted off. He's healing from it, but these days he basically is a huge guy running around in business suits, but with a cow skull for a head. You know, it's creepy. That's funny. Minotaur. It's also disturbing. Minotaur runs Roxxon, which is the catch-all evil corporate entity in Marvel Comics, okay? What he is intentionally sort of polluting and poisoning the world, and he's got a reason for that. This brings him into conflict with Thor, whose mother is actually Gaia, you know, from the Earth goddess. And what's fun is this. Minotaur has thought ahead on how to weaken Thor. He bought the rights to the Marvel Comics stories about Thor and has, unbeknownst to Thor, been making stories where Thor looks foolish, which somehow, with like the Enchantress's spells, is weakening Thor. And that's so meta. Here's Minotaur holding a Thor comic. We've got Enchantress. And yeah. Are you content Thor? He's got his own. There's now a Roxxon endorsed Thor. It's meta, but that's a really fun idea that takes some actual elements that have been introduced in Marvel Comics and uses them in a fun way. Oh, I totally hear somebody like Patrick Bateman coming out of Dario Agger / Minotaur. He's a scumbag. He's hateable, but he's also powerful. He's a good threat. I'm also looking forward to this Roxxon Presents Thor one shot. It's a funny idea, but it's also a threatening idea. And so there you've got Enchantress ripping up Journey into Mystery number 83. I want to say, was that the first appearance of Thor? Was it number 83? Journey into Mystery 83? It's close to that. I think it's 83. Testing my nerd knowledge. I should have prepared. Anyway, look, your mileage may vary how much you care about Thor or Marvel comics and stuff like that. But I really liked Al Ewing's run on Immortal Hulk. I thought that was a really strong comic book run. And Immortal Thor might hit some of the same levels. We're only at issue 9. He's still building a lot of the elements, but he's taking the character in some interesting directions and not discounting anything that's happened before. You don't need to know it, but it's also building on it. It's good. It's clever. What else can I talk about that came out this week? I'll just mention real quick. I'm not going to mention everything that I looked at, but with the Bone project, you also get some like some reprints of like sketches and stuff that he did recently. And look, a reprint of the first Bone comic that he made as a little kid, or comics. Isn't that amazing? I want to be so careful with these. He made these like self-printed little comics when he was a kid about these characters. So these are characters Jeff Smith has had in his mind for a long time. It's a great idea as an extra. Great idea. How many people have had their characters that long that they could even include something like that? You know, there's a few creators out there. Like, you know, I know maybe he wasn't a little kid, but Eric Larson has had Savage Dragon in some form or another since he was, you know, very young. Oh, cool. I got it right. Journey into Mystery 83. I know my comic book trivia. Void Rivals returned after a brief hiatus, and you know, how much you like sci-fi is going to inspire like how much you like this book. This one, what I like about it is that it's mostly sort of an action chase type issue, and it doesn't have like much in the way of the like Transformers connections or anything like that. It sort of develops just the two main characters a bunch and gives them a threatening enemy. So this one is a little bit more of a standalone issue, but it's actually one of the issues I've liked the most so far in this run, for what it's worth. So, you know, a lot of you have probably been exposed to Robert Kirkman, and you either like his ideas and his dialogue or you don't. I do. I like Kirkman more when he leans into the humor, because I think he's a legit funny guy. And when he isn't leaning into the humor, I find some of his dialogue very functional, but not always as interesting as when he's doing comedy stuff. So I like when he does comedy stuff. He does have some light humor in this, and I felt like this was closer to the Kirkman I like the most. But there's nothing bad to say about the artist Lorenzo De Felici. You know, very, very capable artist. Some good colors in it. You know, it's bold. It's good. I don't know if it's great, but it's very good. But how much you like it depends on how much you just sort of like sci-fi and are invested in this universe. Yeah, I did feel like it slowed down a little after the first maybe 3 issues or so. This feels like it's starting to ramp up again in a good way. Do I have a good example of funny Kirkman comics? Yeah, Battle Pope. Battle Pope is hilarious, at least to me. Tech Jacket, I thought, had some good character-based humor. And the early issues of Invincible were a little funnier, too. The first, like, 4 or 5 were a little funnier. And there's moments of humor later. But yeah, like, definitely some of his earlier stuff. Capes is pretty funny. I need to pick up Shadow of the Green Goblin. Well, I do like J.M. DeMatteis. By the way, I'll just say something like real quick. J.M. DeMatteis and Sal Buscema had a fantastic run on Spider-Man in basically late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that range, on Spectacular Spider-Man. It was a really solid run that was probably overlooked a little, overshadowed, because Amazing Spider-Man was humongous at the time. Humongous. Boy, did they do some good stuff together. And Marvel just like isn't reprinting that in trades or anything. And it really deserves to be read by people again, because J.M. DeMatteis did some great stuff with more obscure villains, a lot of good gang war stuff. And he was the guy that really made Harry Osborn a big threat as Green Goblin. Really good stories there, and they deserve to be read, but they're not out there in trade paperbacks. So Marvel, you're probably not listening, but if you are, I think that there's an audience that would really respect the DeMatteis Buscema Spectacular Spider-Man run if you released it and had it marketed correct, because it's really strong. I mean, if you ever did, I'd certainly have like DeMatteis on this show at the very least to promote it. I think it's really good stuff. Thank you for the super chat, Joshua Hayes. I'll pop my head up here. You've been away a bit. Good old life, right? I wanted to commend your tastefulness in presenting tough topics and enthusiasm, excitement for comics otherwise. Question. Fave DC comic as a kid? Well, look, it's a little cliche, but it was definitely Batman. Although the first one I ever got, just to be clear, random issue of The Flash that featured Gorilla Grodd. And I found Gorilla Grodd scary because he had the telepathic powers, and he was making some some punks in the city imagine that they were like drowning in blood or something like that. So yeah, that was cool. All right, head off to bed. I understand there's not a whole lot left to this show, but I do want to talk about one last book that came out this past week. Oh no, you know what? Before I even show that, excuse me. What am I? There's some stuff that I can't show because I read it digitally. So I supported the Zorro Kickstarter by Sean Gordon Murphy, and it's up through issue 3 right now. And I believe it's Massive is publishing print editions of that are all like those first 3 are all out. They're good. The art is incredible. It's a good remix of the ideas of Zorro. And again, Zorro's a really cool character that deserves to be put back in the public eye every once in a while. I might have preferred it to be, Diego de la Cruz? All of a sudden I forget the main Zorro guy. Anyway, but I do like that it's something different. Zorro in the modern day. I like that he's driving around in a muscle car instead of a horse. De la Vega. Thank you, everybody. Don de la Vega. Diego de la Vega. Jesus. Don Diego de la Vega. Anyway, thank you, everybody. But it's fun. Here's what I love this week. So I'll get my print version of this coming week, but The Last Mermaid #2 by Derek Kirk Kim came out this past week. My store that I have it on hold, I guess something happened at the shipping warehouse and it got delayed a week. Frustrating. So I did try to look at like other stores nearby because I love to have a print copy and show you guys some of just a hint at like the books that I'm talking about. And it was sold out everywhere else. It was sold out everywhere else. But Image does send me PDFs of their books ahead of time to review. I rarely look at them because I like to actually support the creators and my comic book store. So I usually just buy them and I ignore those. Since it's like late and I know I will still buy this issue, I wanted to be up to date and I read the PDF this time. And I'll tell you, The Last Mermaid #2 is at least as good as issue #1. The artwork is so charming but exciting. The main character, the mermaid, she's really cute and she's really dangerous. There's a scene in this where, she needs to eat a fish or something. And all of a sudden her nails just become these tiny, or thin, but long claw spikes or something. I was like, oh my God. She has a pet axolotl that she calls Lottie that swims around with her. And in this one, there's like scenes where it's like biting tiny worms in the ocean and slurping them up like spaghetti. And I was like, okay, I love this pet. I love it. It's that's gross but cute the way it was delivered. Oh, you know what? I feel like I'm probably going to be too late for this. I did think of a letters page name to suggest. I'm probably too late. It should be called something like Log Lines. Because waterlogged or waterlogged lines. I don't know. Something like that. Waterlogged. Waterlogs. That's what I want to call them. Because logs can be like written missives. But if it's in the water, it's a log. I don't know. Waterlogs. That's what I want the letter. That's my suggestion for a letters page. But I'm probably too late. I'm sure he's already chosen something. It should be called Waterlogs. The art is great. The sci-fi concepts are great. The cliffhanger at the end, oh my God, he's really putting this poor mermaid through the ringer. She is in a post-apocalyptic desert world. Just amazing. Oh, that's a good one. Scale mail is good. It's not as good as Waterlogs. I strongly recommend The Last Mermaid. I like it so much. The artwork itself is just amazing. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Not always. I've only named one. I've only named one letters page. That was what did I call it? Oh, letter hacks for Walking Dead. I came up with letter hacks. Siren Songs isn't bad. Not bad. Here, last book I'll talk about a little is the latest issue of The Sacrificers is out by Rick Remender and Max Fiumara, Dave McCaig. It really shows that there are problems with the gods in this fantasy world. There's this city being devastated by Luna, the goddess of the moon, one of the most powerful goddesses, and the people call on their patron god, like this god of the sea, and are like, hey, like, we're your loyal subjects. You have to protect the city. And he's like, you know what? Fine, you're actually right. And all we get to see though, like as he's like trying to defend them, is this massive wave is about to destroy the city. Oh my goodness! And then we switch from there to the like emaciated, on the run daughter of the sun and the moon, who hate each other now, and it talks about like growing up with them and like she's just trying to persevere. She's so weak, but she's fighting her way to escape through vines and cliffs, and she's trying to find food to survive. She's certainly on the back foot. The art's really solid. I mean, that's good. She's being chased by hellhounds. It's really cool. It's really cool. Now, you have to be into high fantasy to get into this. You do. But it has relatable ideas behind it, just simply being on the run or having parents that squabble or fight. Man, Rick Remender finds a way to take like, something like a concept of a god and find a way to make it relatable. Dude, Death of Power in the books that I got is incredible. It is insane. That is one violent book, but it's cool. It's badass. That's by Kurt Burdick. Kurt Burdick. Yes, I agree. Yeah, Lake Como Art Festival, Comic Art Festival has some great artists. Boy, I'd love to go to that one. I think that's basically all the comics that I had time to read this week. I picked up a couple issues of the series. What's it called? Hold on. Under the Trees Where Nobody Sees. It's called something like that. I've just been hearing that in the news a bunch, so I'm curious to see where that goes. Thank you for being here, folks. We had a good turnout, man. Now that we're at the end, I'll just say I was nervous about interviewing Elliott Kalan at the beginning because I personally am a legit big fan of his podcast, The Flophouse. I thought that his work on The Daily Show and Mystery Science Theater 3000 were like, he's a funny guy. He's a really funny guy. Oh, the Displaced issue 2 came out. I didn't get that yet. I didn't show She-Hulk. It's good. I just didn't have a whole lot to say about every comic that I read this week. Nothing bad to say about She-Hulk. She-Hulk is good. It's essentially a romance comic. It's a superhero book, but it's a romance comic. It's really, really charming. Yeah, it looks like an interesting book. I haven't had time to read it all yet, though. I only like browsed the first issue so far. I just didn't have enough time. There was a lot to do this week, and not the least of which is I'm trying to work on doing everything I can to get my next episode of Comic Tropes out this weekend. I want to get it out in a timely manner. I have been some ideas I end up putting off because I don't know how to come up with like sort of my angle on that material. And I've always wanted to do an episode about Wallace Wood, known to many fans as Wally Wood, but he didn't really like to be called that. And the thing about Wood is, even though his career in some ways was brief, he had a lot of impact in several different decades. And it was just so much. And I'm like, how do I digest this man's impact and life into an episode of Comic Tropes. And all of a sudden, like, this seems so obvious. I was like, oh, well, no one ever said that, like, I had to try to digest it all into one. I'll make it into like 3 or so. And it's not going to be 3 in a row. But I was like, oh, that's how I'll limit myself. Is I'm literally going to talk about Wallace Wood's entry into comics through his EC Comics work. No Silver Age stuff, no Bronze Age stuff. I'll get to that someday. You know, like, that's important, like Daredevil and Sally Forth and Canon and a bunch of other things. Sky Masters, his inking career, his health, you know, like, these are things that are really interesting and have to be talked about if you talk about Wallace Wood. But it doesn't all have to be done in one episode. Otherwise, it would take me ages, and it would be like an hour-long episode. And honestly, those don't always do well for comic book stuff. Maybe if you're just describing a book, it does. I don't know. But just an artist I really love personally. I really admire. I think he was incredible. And so, yeah, I'm just going to talk about a piece of his early life. Going to do some other stuff, and then I'll come back to Wallace Wood. So that's what I've decided I will do. Yes. I need to talk to Jim, but like our latest episode is done. There is one ready to release. We've already decided on what we'll be talking about for the one after that. So that's always in the works. We just fit that in because each of us are sort of considering that like our fun project. I mean, if it explodes, awesome. But Jim, you know, makes his money doing all sorts of freelance gigs. I make my money by doing Comic Tropes episodes. So we fit that in every couple of weeks, but we probably will pretty soon. Yep. Wallace Wood, originally from Manga, Minnesota. Exactly. Let's see. I haven't done a video on the 22 panels that always work, but eventually when I talk about Wood's career, I'll talk about that. By the way, his original version was something like 24 to 26 panels. I'll just give this little trivia since we're here. Larry Hama, I've interviewed, and Larry Hama was one of Wood's last assistants. And he basically photocopied those panels that always work and posted it up because, of course, he was an editor at Marvel. It was like a suggestion for artists that were stumped, but not all of them would reprint properly. So it got shortened down to 22. Already did see Madam Web. I went out to the theaters just to take a chance, and like I made a quick video on this channel talking about it. It was bad. It was really bad. It was stunningly bad. I did not expect much, and it fell below those expectations. Ralph Reese is still very active and easy to reach on Facebook, and he has plenty to say about working with Woody. I wonder if I'm brave enough to approach him. I've never met or interacted with Ralph Reese, but yes, he has probably, of everybody living, Ralph Reese might know the most about Woody, because I think he worked for him for longer than Larry did. Howard Chaykin should also know a bunch, but yeah. Yeah, if you find that interesting, Kevin, I do an interview with Larry Hama, and I did ask him about Wood, so there is some stuff there. Let's see. Yeah, of course I like Walking Dead, but I also like always sort of have the caveat that like, hey, I proofread the entire run, so like I was a tiny bit involved. I wouldn't say like I was important. I wasn't an editor per se. I wasn't the artist or anything. Nothing important like that. But I'm close to it, I know Robert pretty darn well, and I was being sent the issues, to proofread for mistakes all the time, and so I am a fan, but I was also kind of close to it. But definitely more of a fan of the comic, I will admit. But yeah, someday I'll finish that. I haven't finished the show. I did see the trailer for Maxine. If you folks haven't seen, one of the better horror movies to come out in a while was X. And at the time that they were filming this movie, basically set in the later 70s, like it's just like sort of some indie people that are going to make a porn movie, and like then they start getting killed. The actress Mia Goth and the filmmaker Ty West decided that there was more to this backstory. And while they were sort of like just shut in with this small crew down in, I think, Australia, might have been New Zealand, but I think it was Australia, they decided to also film a prequel. They on the spot came up with Pearl, and Pearl was great. And now they're making a sequel to it called Maxine. So that should be really fun. Yeah, I actually did make a mistake when I was proofreading on one element. There's an issue. I can't quite remember which one it is right now, but I want to say 8 or 18. I could be wrong on that. The characters use the word zombies, and in The Walking Dead, that word wasn't really supposed to exist. That's why they always called them roamers and biters and things like that. And that one got by me, and that was the kind of thing I was supposed to catch. Oops. All I can say is I don't think the buck should have stopped with me. I was trying to catch that stuff, but ultimately there were credited editors. So, I don't take full responsibility there, but at the same time, I was trying my best at the time to make sure that no mistakes got through. Oops. Yeah, they're both really good. If you like horror, they're both really well done. In fact, you know what? I think Pearl, which is technically the second one they made that they like didn't have as much pre-production or anything. I think Pearl might have come out to be the better movie in a way. But anyway, it's always fun to just sort of answer random questions with you guys. I appreciate that stuff. I guess that'll do it for tonight. Yeah. Oh, geez. We've been going for over 2.5 hours. That's plenty of time. That's plenty of free show, right? Thank you all for jumping in here. Lovely to see always like a mix of regulars, some people that I know other places. Thank you for jumping in, like Eli, and seeing like new names pop up. It really means a lot to me. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this one up. I'm gonna get in and edit in some chapter breaks, and I'm gonna eat some dinner, and I'm gonna get right back to work on comic tropes. Thanks, everybody. Tell you what, you didn't get it yet, but I think you've definitely earned it tonight by staying this long. Double salute. You earned it. Take that with you. Take care, everybody. Keep reading comics.